Welcome to another edition of Inquire Online, and I'm extremely excited to have in the studio today Andy Beal, an internet marketing consultant, and to me, really one of my mentors in this area and field, especially in the area of transparency and its use in the business world. He's the author of the book Radically Transparent: Monitoring and Managing Reputations Online. It is terrific to have you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Andy, this concept of transparency is a new paradigm to step into. And even in my own evolution of doing my best to walk the talk of these tools, I noticed the discomfort of what is that edge of transparency and what does transparency mean in the business world?
Mm-hmm. I think that there's a normal fear when you hear the word transparency that you're gonna be forced to open up beyond what you feel comfortable doing so. And I think sometimes maybe for especially for businesses that are first taking that first step towards being radically transparent, maybe transpose the word transparency with authentic. And so maybe that'll help you feel a little bit more comfortable. And that is, I'm not suggesting that you should reveal everything or reveal the inner workings of your business down to, trade secrets, et cetera. But be authentic in what you do say. So be honest, be sincere, share your successes, explain your failures, be willing to talk to your customers, and let them get a real sense of who you are and who your business, your business policies and ethics.
Years ago, I was in IBM for many years and worked with other large corporations, and there was this long cycle of preparing a message, and it was formally written, and there was like the people that manage that, and then there's the rest of us. And this demand of 24-hour news and social media and others looks like it's almost a necessity to start understanding this so you can move fast enough.
And I think in a way, that's what gives small businesses and medium-sized businesses an advantage over large corporations. And that is, as you explained, large corporations are used to having a PR team that prepares a written statement or prepares a speech. It goes through legal. It goes through all different fine-tuning and tweaking. And then finally, it's presented to the public. Well, I think the general consumer, your stakeholder, whether that's your employees, investors, consumers, I think they're looking for more of that transparency, more of that authentic conversation from you. And that kind of levels the playing field, certainly for small businesses, because now you don't have to worry about, well, I don't have a PR firm that's going to manage my campaign for me. It's like, okay, well, forget that. Scrap it. If you take a look at large Fortune 500 companies, they're trying to move away from that corporate rhetoric, that canned speech. And so I think that, small businesses are going to benefit from that. And I think that businesses of all sizes going forward have got to find that authentic voice, that transparency, because I think you'll see that customers, business partners, investors, employees are looking to hear from you, and they want you to cut out the fluff and just cut to the chase.
What got you into this? Because you were quite an established computer SEO expert. I've met people who've gone, I knew Andy when,
Yeah.
What drew your attention to this?
Well, it was a slow transition. It probably started 5 or 6 years ago. While implementing SEO campaigns for clients, started getting a lot of feedback that clients wanted a particular niche within SEO. And that is, when you type their name into Google, something negative was showing up. How do we kind of suppress that? How do we push it down? And so it started off as a component of SEO. And then over the years, I started expanding on those services and realized that there was a great need for online reputation management services. And so transitioned over to starting to offer those services. Then I moved into consulting, found that the demand for reputation management consulting was very high. Got called and asked to write a book. Originally, someone called me and wanted me to write a book on blogging. And I'm like, look, blogging's been done. Everybody's talked about that. But here's a concept that's going to be hot in the next couple of years. And that's where Radically Transparent was born. And now I've shifted. I mean, I am now pretty much 95% of my consulting is reputation management. I hardly do any general SEO these days. And with Trackur, Trackur, my reputation monitoring tool, I'm pretty much focused on that. And it's been a good transition. I'm enjoying being in this new space.
First of all, I want to say I'm a user of Trackur and really enjoying it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
With clients, I'll tell them Google Alerts can be your start, but if you're serious and you really want to know what's going on, you need to just sign up for Trackur, where it's digging deep and it's easy to use. It lets me know. I can sit down with a client and go, I'm worried something's said about me I don't know, and we just plug it in and find out.
And that's what we're aiming for, so that's good to hear.
One of the pieces that I realize is the biggest challenge in managing your reputation is that people can speak anonymously on the internet. And that, to me, is the biggest challenge, because if I had people lining up at my door complaining, they're at least taking the risk of being personally there. But when they can be anonymous, it seems like it sometimes almost brings out the worst in human nature. Would you talk about that, and how does a company deal with that concern?
Well, I think right now, because we're finding, as consumers, as purchasers of products and services, we're just finding our voices. And so I think that anonymous reviews and comments are tolerated right now. I think as more of us go online and use social networks to voice our concerns or give feedback, I think that the rest of us, our peers and people like us, are going to value anonymous comments and critiques a lot less. And so I think that will force a lot of people to put their name behind any criticism that they have. But right now, it can be a problem. In Radically Transparent, we talk about a particular type of detractor, which is an undermining detractor. And it could be a competitor. It could be a former employee that has a grudge against you, and they go around making anonymous comments. And really, a classic quote that we have in the book is don't feed the trolls. So those people where you have no idea who they are, you can't validate if they were even a customer of yours, you have to tread very carefully. And there's a number of things we can do. And just one tip off the top of my head is to try and bring them out into the sunlight, right? So instead of letting them just kind of be in the shadows, offer to them, hey, we want to sort this out for you. We have no record of this transaction, but we want to make sure you're happy. Here's our toll-free number. Please contact us. We want to deal with this with you immediately. Typically, they tend to fade away because they don't have anything to substantiate their claims.
You just described something that really, the power of a person that's willing to identify themselves against the anonymous person. Mm-hmm. Here you got this talking head. We don't know who they are, and they aren't willing to express it. And then the owner of the company or someone else goes, we're committed to excellent services. You come in, we'll address it. It's amazing when you see that in action, how it really does null out. Mm-hmm. It almost turns the complaint to a positive marketing quality.
That's always your goal as well. And, studies have shown that, if you have somebody that's happy with your service, they'll tell, 5 people. And if someone's unhappy with your service, they'll tell 10 people. We've kind of all heard that anecdote. But what extends beyond that is if you take someone that's unhappy with your service and then make them happy with your service, you rectify the situation, they'll go ahead and tell 15, 20 people. And so if you look at a lot of instances in reputation management, if you can find a way to resolve the complaint from somebody to their satisfaction, you can often turn them into an evangelist. Classic example of that, your listeners may be familiar with Jeff Jarvis and Dell Hell, where he was completely unhappy with, in fact, unhappy is an understatement. He was really upset with Dell and their customer service, and he launched the whole Dell Hell theme. And for many years, attacked Dell continuously. Dell finally rectified everything, turned things around, started embracing transparency to the point where Jeff Jarvis became happy with Dell again, and he ended up writing not one but 2 articles in Business Week saying how fantastic Dell is with their social media and their reputation management. So that's a case study right there, that if you can take a detractor and rectify the situation and help them to kind of resolve it and become happy, they could potentially turn into an evangelist for you.
You know, that's a great example of a phenomenon called marketing through reality, where if we write a big enough check, we don't have to actually fix it. And there was an executive once that went to a friend in the newspaper and said, "We're doing all the PR. Why aren't we improving in the press?" And they said, "You're marketing through reality. You need to actually fix some things." And that seems like a good example of the value of transparency and people having a voice, is that the company might actually have to fix something and improve it.
Absolutely. And you shouldn't be scared of this feedback. Think about the thousands, tens of thousands of dollars that companies paid for market research firms to go out and get a sense of, what do you like about our products? What features would you like to see? And you spend that money to kind of have a small group of a couple hundred people give you feedback. Now you can tap into completely free market research. And honestly, it does you no good to stick your head in the sand and just tell yourself that there's nothing wrong with your products and services. Because honestly, people are having these conversations about your product flaws, areas of neglect in your service. And so you need to hear them, because you can then fix them. And then likewise, listen to what your competitors what they're saying about your competitors, because you want to hear what people like about your competition's offering, what they don't like, and maybe you can capitalize on that. Maybe if there's a particular feature that's missing from what your biggest competitor's offering, maybe that's something you can roll out when you launch your next product.
Isn't that exciting that rate of paying attention to the needs of the customer and adapting can outrank a very expensive marketing campaign? I mean, that's exciting to me. Really, you can actually compete with quality, where someone just writing a bigger check can't just bury you.
Right. And I think that, the recession that we're in has really put a spotlight on that concept. And that is, companies can no longer afford to buy their way out of a negative situation. And so turning to social media and reputation management helps them to build a better brand more cost effectively. And it's really what they should be doing anyway, but it does help smaller businesses, because I can go on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook and set up a profile, reach out to customers for the exact same cost that a Fortune 500 company can. And so I can now compete, and perhaps I can do a better job of reaching out to my potential customers, especially if I'm a very small business and I want to reach out to prospects. Then it's going to be my voice potentially, one-on-one, not some intern that Coca-Cola has hired to be their voice, but it's going to be me reaching out to customers. So perhaps when you look at it that way, I have a huge advantage over large companies.
There's another piece I'm noticing, and I'd love for you to comment on it. It's almost like the reputation is more believable if it's not just all tens.
Right.
If we look at it or something else, I'll describe it. I have about 90 recommendations on LinkedIn. My last customer said, I read all the recommendations. And I said, would you really be honest about it? And he said, well, some of them look like they might be friends. And some of them really were outstanding. And I said, well, what was your experience of that? And he said, that's what made me believe you, because it wasn't all lined up perfect. And, if there was a problem in there and I had handled it, he said that would have added more credibility. So could you describe about the natural, authentic inconsistency being of value?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And again, I've seen studies to back this up, and that is, perfect 10s, perfect 5-star ratings tend to kind of raise questions in us. We're like, well, I don't know. Surely there's some kind of flaw, something I need to be concerned with. And I think I read a study a year or so ago that 4 out of 5 stars is where you want to be. You don't want to be 5 because that raises suspicion. You don't want to be 3 because you're mediocre. 4 out of 5, people start thinking to themselves, okay, this is a good product, because there are some criticisms, but generally it's a good product. And really, if you think about the feedback that you may get, actually, for Trackur, I don't mind getting negative feedback. It generally tends to be that there's a particular feature missing. Let's say, for example, automated sentiment analysis. People want Trackur to be able to automatically determine if a discovered item is positive or negative in its sentiment.
Wow. That's
really hard to do, would cost thousands of dollars, and would raise the price of Trackur. I can't do it. But if someone reads a review of Trackur And the biggest criticism they have is that we don't offer automated sentiment analysis. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Because that's not my target audience anyway. And if someone reads it and says, well, that's the worst they can find to say about Trackur is that it doesn't have to sign me up. So I think that you do need to embrace it. And then honestly, if there are a lot of negative reviews and negative feedback, then you really need to take a hard look at your product. And as you touched on earlier, typically it means that you've neglected an area of your product or service, and you should take a long, hard look at it and take this feedback. And that's something that Dell did. When we interviewed Dell for the book, they said, we don't go into a meeting without bringing in customer feedback, because we want them inside the walls of our meeting so that we can kind of take their criticism, their requests, and build upon that and make a better product.
What would you say are some of maybe some examples of what not to do, or what are real train wrecks in this area of reputation management? Because someone might be doing it and just not know it.
Well, I think that, one key thing is you don't have to jump into every conversation. I think that, for example, if you signed up for Twitter and all you ever did was responded to your customers, then you're kind of not using it to its full advantage. It almost gets creepy. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't mention IBM, or I didn't mention Apple because someone's gonna reply to me, and it's just kind of like you're being stalked by the brand. So you don't necessarily need to respond to everything. For example, Lenovo. They told us that if they see their customers coming to their defense and evangelizing on their behalf, they stay out of the conversation, because it's more authentic that their existing customers respond to a criticism than for them to come in. So if they see that it's being handled well and their customers are responding and correcting misinformation or defending them, then they'll stay out of that, because that works for them. And I think that's good to do. I think also, I don't feel like you have to have all these kinds of rules of engagement in terms of it's got to go through PR, it's got to go through your legal department, because by the time it does all of that, you lose the messaging and it becomes corporate rhetoric, and you might miss out on the speed too. So there may be a response that's needed. By the time it goes through all the official channels, it's blown up way beyond that initial blog post or that initial tweet. So those are two key things. And it's okay to have policies in place, but put them in place now. Have guidelines as to what you can and cannot say now, and then just let people work with that, or you work with that. So think about what you're going to do now in terms of if there was an attack, how would I respond? Who would I get involved? What channels would I use? Have that planned out now. But have it planned out so you've got some flexibility should you kind of incur any kind of reputation attack.
What about someone that they get to act like they don't work for the company?
Yeah, that is a big no-no, because and we talk about that and give advice in the book on why you shouldn't do that. But I mean, in a nutshell, there's a big chance of discovery. If nothing else, there's a real chance you're going to get discovered. For example, someone writes a negative blog post about your business. You go on and you post anonymously, and you are just really over the top in terms of praising the company. But you do it. You think you're anonymous. Well, what you don't realize is that blogger is capturing the email address you use, and a quick Google search might discover that you work for the company because you use that same email address on a certain social networking profile. Secondly, they're capturing your IP address. So if you've left that comment while you're at work and your company has its own IP, then they're going to discover that you work for that company. It's very easy to track that back. So if nothing else, there's the discovery. But even if that's not the case, typically this kind of stuff rises to the surface. And I've seen it time and time again where companies kind of, it just stands out. I mean, it just looks obvious when, there's all this over-the-top positive praise when they're under attack. And so just avoid that. It's much better to kind of let your customers. Now, here is a tip. If you've got some strong evangelists that love your product and they've said to you, look, anything I can ever do for you, I love what you do, just shoot them an email. Say, hey, would you mind just kind of balancing out this conversation? If you've got 2 minutes spare, could you jump on this forum? Could you leave a comment on this post with your feedback and your take on this particular scenario? That's absolutely fine. But yeah, I would stay away from creating fake personas. And there's nothing worse than a forum attack. Something happens on a message board, and then the person that comes to your defense only registered their account that day, and it's the first post they've ever posted to that message board. That just reeks of a fake profile.
This leads to one of the next concerns that small businesses have is, how do I manage this reputation with limited time?
Well, I think that one of the things that you need to do is don't be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of social networks that are out there. Because if you look at all the different social networks, it could be very easy to feel like you have to be involved with all of them. So, for example, you've got to find your centers of influence. Where do your potential customers, where do your potential stakeholders tend to hang out? Now, for example, for you, Martin, you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That works fantastically for you. You do a lot of great networking. It brings business in, that kind of thing. I don't get as much benefit out of LinkedIn, but I don't feel the need to try and become a LinkedIn expert. I kind of just do the bare minimum. I spend my time on Twitter, and that's where I kind of reach out to my target audience. And I think that your listeners, small business owners, need to figure out, okay, where are my customers likely to be? Are they likely to be on Facebook, LinkedIn? Do they use MySpace a lot? Are they on Twitter? Do they even know what a blog is? And so I think it's important to make that determination, because you might find that, look, really, we don't need to be in social media. Our target audience, they're all over the age of 60, but they respond really well to email newsletters. And maybe that's where I need to kind of focus my efforts in terms of reaching out to them. And so I think that the first thing is to not be overwhelmed, not to try and set up everything and be active in everything. But at the end of the day as well, whatever you do decide to move forward with, it's not going to cost you a whole lot. And I think that in terms of the time cost, most small businesses, 30 minutes to an hour a day is plenty of time. In fact, there was even a book written recently, Social Media Market in an Hour a Day. So someone's figured out that it can be done in an hour a day. And honestly, if it weren't for the fact that social media is a huge component of what I do every day, I could get by with 30 minutes to an hour a day. So I don't think it's going to cost a lot, but I think you need to look at it not as an expense, but as an investment. And so instead of spending those dollars on a radio or print campaign, you're saving yourself that money. And, you're going to start off, you're going to invest your own time, but then you might find some ways to kind of automate it. Trackur would automate the monitoring side of things. You might, you'll implement your own process in terms of, how you check things every day, how you respond to things. And I really think that most businesses, if there's one person responsible for it, then typically 30 to 60 minutes a day. Really, if you've got a huge company, you're going to have a team of people anyway. But to give you an example of you don't need a lot of people, think of the size of Lenovo, multi-billion-dollar company, and this may have changed, but when we interviewed them 18 months ago, 2 years ago, 3 people managed their social media campaign, managed their online reputation management campaign, just 3 people.
Who would you say are good examples of people handling this well today?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think that, Dell is doing a good job with that. I think that Zappos, the shoe company, has done a fantastic job. I mean, they did really well. They engaged on Twitter, and, they just got acquired by Amazon, so something worked out really well there for them. And, I think that, you see a lot of smaller companies that are doing really well. Small startup companies that don't have the budgets to spend on advertising, they're using blogs and different social networks to reach out and engage. And you can do marketing within social media, but typically it means you don't have to spend a whole lot. I mean, it's more of a PR type of effort than it is an advertising effort where you have to spend hard dollars.
I heard a wonderful story of a woman who had a photograph done that apparently was just outstanding, and she put it on her Facebook, and friends asked about it, and she contacted the photographer in Michigan, she's in North Carolina, and said, you need to build a little Facebook page, like a business page, not a private profile. I want to showcase you. And now that woman is getting business from all over the area. And that's such a great example of you got to have still a good product, and then somebody being a leader there and promoting it, and you have it available. One of the things that you brought up that I thought was important in asking, how do you clean up a big mess that occurs? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your comment was that's why you want to start by building authentic content about yourself now. Not trumped up, but real content, so that if something does occur, there's something for a backdrop. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the absence of anything positive that you've created, if you face a reputation attack, the void is going to be filled with the negative criticism. So you want to be proactive. While you're not under fire is the time to build your social networking campaign. Create a blog. Start adding posts to it. Create a Facebook page. Build a network on Twitter. This is the time to do it because it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. So you want to have this in place now so that if you face a reputation attack, you've got these resources at your disposal and potentially can help to mitigate any potential reputation attack. So it is important to do it now, to build it now, and then likewise to have a plan, have a strategy of what you would do if you come under attack. And I think if you go ahead and build it now, then it's a whole lot easier to do it than when you're kind of knee deep in a crisis and everything's coming at you from different directions. Then you're going to have a tougher time doing it.
Then you have to call up Andy.
Yeah, that's typically,
I need you to put everything aside, and you'll have to say that cost a little more.
It does. I mean, I think that we're seeing a shift. A lot of times I would hear from potential customers that were facing a crisis. And I think we're starting to see companies learning the lesson from others' mistakes and realizing they need to be proactive now and put this stuff in place. And that's good to see.
It was so exciting because after I learned that from you, about 6 months later, I was sitting down with the company and they wanted me to come in to do a little social media intro. And I really wanted to build up more experience. And I looked them up online and there were 2 complaints and a website. Now, behind the counter of the company at the front desk, there was a 3-inch notebook of happy customers, all written out, looking great. And so this was a piece where they had loving customers and they weren't directing them to brag about it online. What's your advice on how to do that?
Well, that's an important point because your detractors, those that have something negative to say against you, they will find the appropriate channels online. You don't have to worry about them. But we tend to neglect those that love our service. Those are the ones that we kind of take for granted. And they are also the type of customer that won't really go online and share positive reviews unless you prompt them. And so I think it's important to listen for those opportunities where customers tell you that they love your product or service. And then you need to direct them. And that's why it's important to figure out where your centers of influence are. Because if it's Amazon.com, then when someone tells you that they love your book, for example, someone says to me, "Hey, Andy, I love Radically Transparent. It's a great book." I'm like, "That's great. I always appreciate the feedback. Hey, if you happen to have 2 minutes spare, would you mind heading over to Amazon.com and just leaving a quick review? I'd really appreciate it." Now, a lot of people don't take the time to do that. They just thank the person and move on. So I think it's important to figure out where online exerts the most influence over your reputation. That's where you want to try and encourage your customers to head to. I stayed at a hotel in Seattle a couple years ago, and the hotel bragged about its 4-star rating at a particular website and said basically it was really good. I use this as a case study on my blog, and they created the perception that, hey, look, everybody else loves us. Therefore, you're going to have a fantastic stay here. Kind of planting that seed that, hey, if something goes wrong, it's probably you, not us, because everybody else loves us, right? And then they said, if you find that your stay is just as good, we'd love it if you went to this website and left a review. Now, that's the great way to do it. And I think more businesses need to take those guest book comments, those off-the-cuff kind of feedback that they get within their office or their store and try and channel them online, because those will help to insulate should you face an attack.
I was talking to one smaller area near the beach, and they had a site, and there were some of the businesses really had the hotels had horrific reviews. I mean, horrible reviews. And I pulled them aside and said, just informally, what are they really like? Because this person lived in the town, and they said them going out of business would be a community service. So it was exciting because they weren't monitoring it. They really were doing things they shouldn't do, and it was being visible. So in some ways, it was a natural selection operating, where it really was serving before they could just have lots of ads and keep hooking people in, and they could hide those things.
I think Abraham Lincoln said one time about your character is a tree and your reputation is the shadow of the tree. I'm paraphrasing awfully here, but it's something along those lines. And that is, look, your reputation, your shadow is only ever going to mimic what your character is, the actual tree. So I can't fix your reputation if you have a bad character. So to take your example, if you're a bed-bug infested hotel with bad service, I can't fix your reputation. You got to fix your problems first. And I think that is important. And I think, as a business owner, you have to take a long, hard look at your practices and say, look, this is our situation. And sometimes you're not going to be able to change it. So, for example, Hummer, the cars that get 10 miles per gallon, they can't change the fact that they're gas guzzlers. They just got to work around it. But, if you are building cars that are gas guzzlers and there's an opportunity for you to build hybrids and better fuel efficiency, then you should look to do that. But sometimes you can't change what, your actual character, but don't be surprised when that gets reflected in your online reputation. So if you want to have a great online reputation, you got to look at your character, look at your business practices, the products that you're putting out there, and fix those, and generally your reputation will follow. And really, I see two main reasons why companies have bad reputations. They have poor products, or there's a misunderstanding about their product. And so people expected they were going to get something that they didn't. And that's generally a gray area as to, did they have the wrong expectations? Were they missold? And so, did they buy into the hype of the latest gadget without actually testing it themselves? And then they kind of get buyer's remorse, that kind of stuff. So it really falls into those two characters. Where I tend to kind of help businesses are the ones that have misinformation out there. People have construed the wrong perception of their brand, and we're trying to kind of educate them, and we're trying to kind of change the balance in terms of the negative reviews and perception that's out there.
That leads to, would you share a little bit about your work and what do you do when you're called into a company today? Because it's evolved over the years.
Yeah, I still tend to work with companies that are on the sharp end of an attack. So not necessarily an immediate reputation attack, but an ongoing negative reputation. And they bring me in to try and help them in two ways. One is the overall perception of their brand, and two is they're very focused on what shows up in Google. So that SEO side of me still has an important role, but it's in a different way. So that's typically where I tend to spend my time, is helping those businesses that and they generally, again, I have one client where they did screw up 4 or 5 years ago, but have completely overhauled their practices. But that kind of reputation from that time is still kind of haunting them a bit. So I kind of come in and, I'm working with them to kind of change that perception. I work with very few companies. I'm very picky. I guess I'm lucky, being one of the first people to be in this space allows me to pick and choose who I work with. I'm also blessed that I'm maxed out with client work, so that's a good position to be in. I do a lot of my stuff is remotely. I do a lot of via email and telephone. I do some on-site visits with clients as well. And then I spend the rest of my time, blogging, running Trackur, speaking at conferences, writing articles, that kind of thing.
And taking beautiful pictures. Yeah, I'm real envious of your photos.
Well, I think we're kindred spirits. I mean, we look at each other's photographs on Flickr. I really enjoy photography. It's a great creative outlet for me because it's still technology, which I'm a geek at heart, but it's a different outlet and it's more creative, and I really enjoy it. And I'm sure you can empathize.
Well,
with that.
Yeah, and it was such a treat. The one snow picture, and I got a little note. You wrote, "This is good, Martin."
Yeah.
Because I have to say, I actually think you're a better photographer. And it's also an example of you walking your talk. It's not like we got a mic in your bedroom or something of your house. But, I know you have a dog you love. You have a passion for photography. Mm-hmm. You like traveling to nice places. It comes out as a much wholer person.
Yeah, I think, I'm not afraid to put myself out there to some degree. I mean, after all, I'm a marketer at heart, so I'm kind of constantly marketing myself, if you like. But, I think, it helps me to have a balance in what I do. And traveling, I really enjoy traveling. I have a part-time gig for my wife's website. She runs govisithawaii.com, and so it's a tough job, but someone has to take all those photographs for her site. So that's pretty neat to do. But photography's great. Now, but again, photography is in some ways I'm running a reputation management campaign on my own photography. I'm making sure that I only post my very best photos to Flickr. All the crappy ones that stay on my computer, you don't see those because I don't want to damage my own reputation as a photographer. So there's a little bit of that too.
Where do you see the future? When I work at the individual level in small business, it's a different way of living where we have local and global contacts. We have allies that might be in Australia that we're working with, and we might have a little ice cream stand in Raleigh. We're working with our customers in the three-dimensional world, and we're echoing it online. So where's this all going?
Well, I think social media has broken down the borders. I think it's brought everybody closer. I mean, the internet as a whole did a great job of that. It made it easier for people to connect. A company in Australia could compete in the U.S. just as easily as a company in the U.S. could. And I think that social networking is redefining our concept of just networking in general. I have good friends in Australia. I have good friends, in different parts of the world, and maintain those friendships via social networks. Likewise, I have customers all over the world. Trackur has customers all over the world, using our service. And so, I think that that's only going to continue to grow. I think that, we're seeing that the big social networks are not country specific. I think that they're growing their reach in all kinds of different countries, and that's good. That's helping us to expose our business to a wider audience. But I think also that there are a lot of opportunities for more niche level sites for local businesses to tap into, or those that specialize in a particular industry to tap into. And we're seeing more and more of those appear as well. So it's we don't have to worry about getting lost in all of the noise. I think that as social networking evolves, we're gonna be able to find our natural place. And I think that there's going to be some networks where we kind of spend more personal time. Some networks are a little bit more business focused. But I think that we're only just started on this. I mean, think about the social networking is less than 5 years old. So there's a long way to go, and it's going to be tough to predict where we're finally going to head. But there's some things to watch out for. I think social fatigue. I think that there's a possibility we'll get tired of maintaining all of these relationships and all of our profiles. We have to be careful of that. I think that there's potential to lose sight of what a real friend is, because we're kind of using the word friend in social networking, and it's losing its meaning in terms of who we refer to as a friend. So, for example, on LinkedIn, I don't add anybody to my network unless I've either personally met them or have had significant online interaction with them, because I want to be able to say, yes, I can vouch for this person. I'm not necessarily going to give them a testimonial, but I can at least say, yes, you want to connect to that person? I'm happy to do that because I know my network. So I think that there are those things to be careful of. But I think there's a lot of exciting things that far outweigh any kind of concerns we might have.
I became aware of how the world was changing when a friend of mine was going to India, and I asked if he would like to meet this marketing person I had become friends with, sharing tips on how to podcast through social media. And he said, sure. And then the next thing was my friend sending me a picture of the two of them having breakfast because by coincidence, my friend was staying 2 kilometers away from this gentleman's office in India. You know, the idea I'm actually able to help people in this type of global community is such an exciting aspect of it. And then the other thing is just learning I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to have to clean them up or do something with them. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the real entrepreneur does take more risk. They aren't reckless, but he's taking some chances. The importance of getting into this.
Yeah, I think, a little bit more of a risk, but, as we both know, the rewards are definitely there, definitely worthwhile to take that little bit of risk. And I think that no matter what size of your company, no matter what stage it is, whether it's B2B, B2C, startup, or Fortune 500 company, there's an opportunity out there for you to utilize social networking to build your online reputation. And even if that just starts with listening, just listening. I mean, you don't have to, if you're not ready to jump in and create profiles and start engaging your customers, at least listen to what's being said about your products, your services, your CEO, your competitors. That's going to give you valuable insight for free that you can then, if you did nothing else, but just then say, okay, I'm hearing that people want this particular product feature. And then you launch that in your next product. If you just did that, that is a huge benefit. That's a huge way to use social networking to not only increase your customer base, but to improve your online reputation. And you've not even had to create a single profile, but you're just listening.
Trackur. I really want to talk a little bit about this because I've taught in the community colleges and working with some small chambers. And of course, I give them Google Alerts as a start. The truth is, if they're serious, I think they should be using Trackur. Could you talk about that? Because that's a low price way for people to get some of your higher end consulting.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head in terms of why I even created Trackur. I think Google Alerts is great. I think most people should start at Google Alerts. It's a free service, low investment, so you can get a feel for what's being said about you out there. But then I noticed that 18 months ago, you had Google Alerts, which was free. Then you had social media reputation monitoring tools that started at $500 a month. I learned about one service. I did an interview with the CEO of one service, and it was $10,000 a month. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's a huge jump there. Small businesses or even large businesses that are just getting into monitoring, that's a big step. So I wanted to create a service that was just as easy to set up and use as Google Alerts, but was approaching the sophistication and the technology of these more expensive services. So, Trackur starts at $18 a month, and that's going to be enough for an individual or a very small business person like a realtor or an attorney or a consultant that doesn't have a lot of brand equity out there. But even at our highest end for enterprise, it's $197 a month. And, that's going to cover 150 different brands. You can group by profiles. There's a lot you can do with that. But the goal is to still keep it easy to use. If you can use Google Alerts or Gmail, you can use Trackur. But we're continuing to throw features at it. We've just announced a new string of features. I'm very excited about what we're working on right now. We are probably a couple of weeks away from announcing some significant upgrades, which is going to be exciting, all while keeping the price points the same. So my goal is to continue adding new features and still keep it affordable.
That's terrific. It's such a great service available to people because then they can go play and find out what's going on. One of the pieces is if there's an argument about you across town, it's probably good to at least know about it.
Right.
And it's a wonderful story of a guy in a referral group who said, I went into this group and they were talking about me and I was so shocked I left and turned my computer off. and I said, wait a second, they're still talking about you. And that leads to the question of the illusion that we've had of control, because one of the big things is people are seeking control. And I'm afraid that maybe we didn't have the control we thought we had. Would you talk about that, of this idea, how do I control it all? Yeah,
I think that if you look at pre-social media in particular, you had the concept of a boardroom where you had people sitting around a table, but it was very clear who was directing the conversation. It was the chairman of the board, the CEO, sitting at the head of the table. That was the person making the final decision. That was the person that everybody followed. That kind of relates to your branding and your messaging, and that is it was a monologue. One person, the company, telling you what you should expect from the products. Here's our campaigns. Here's why you're going to like us, and it was very much one way, one person. We've kind of now moved into more of a King Arthur's round table, if you like, and that is we are sitting at a round table. And the business owner, the CEO, the chairman sits at that table. So do regular employees. So do stakeholders, members of the professional press, citizen journalists, bloggers, tweeters, investors, you name it. They all sit at that table. They all get an equal opportunity to talk about your brand. And so you kind of have to have that concept in place, that there's a dialogue going on now. And yes, you are the official brand. Yes, you kind of do have a little bit of a louder voice, but there are other people that have a say. And I think just as Dell discovered that one blogger that wasn't even a computer blogger, was able to bring down their brand and cause them severe loss of income, loss of reputation for 2 years. I think that if that can happen to a powerful company like Dell, it can happen to anybody. And now if you see how Dell's turned it around, they've brought on board all of their stakeholders. They have ideastorm.com where customers can submit ideas for products and services. There's a lot of different things that Dell's doing now to kind of have that conversation, and it's being very successful for them. I read a report that just from their Twitter account, they can directly attribute $3 million in sales just from their Twitter account, so that they're getting tangible ROI from that.
There's another thing that came up is the legal department of companies are saying stay out of this. And I want to give two places. I was working with a small chamber and they said, well, we brought it to the board and the lawyer recommended we shouldn't have a blog and get involved. Two, the financial companies where they're going, you better double the number of clients you bring in. Oh, but by the way, we don't even want you on LinkedIn. I'd really like you to talk to that because I think that's a serious issue.
If I could be lighthearted,
yeah,
I would say that if it were up to attorneys, no company would ever get started. It's too much liability. You could get sued. Attorneys are there because, they make their living from looking at worst case scenario. And while it's important to get their feedback, you should never base your especially your social media or your online campaign, you should never base it on what an attorney has to say. I think that, your legal team, let them have the role of helping you clean it up if you get into a lot of trouble. But, 99% of the time, you're not going to need them. So I think, listen to their feedback, take it on board. If you're a larger company, do what's absolutely minimum that you can get away with in terms of, structure. So whether, let's say, for example, you start a blog, you're a publicly traded company. And your attorney advises that, look, there are some things you cannot talk about because it's material disclosure. We could get sued by, investigation by the SEC, right? So those things. But for the most part, I would kind of, keep them behind the scenes. And really, there's no, certainly in reputation management, we talk about the fact that there's only really one time that you would even get an attorney involved, and that is when someone makes a negative statement against you that's defamatory, that is blatantly untrue, and you've asked them to take it down or print a correction and they haven't, get your attorney involved. I mean, that's the only time. At just about every other time, you're not going to have your attorneys involved. But I think that worst case scenario, get a new attorney, get a new legal firm. There's some great people out there. I mean, I'm working with a great guy called Chris Gatewood, and he gets it. He understands the space, and so far we're working with him. I tell him how flexible I want him to be in terms of what he looks at. And then he gives me all the best advice. And then I pick and choose what I'm going to take from that and accept responsibility based on, it could really go bad if I don't take this particular piece of advice. Do I want to follow it or not? I've got all of the facts to hand. I know my business goals. I know my customers. I know what I'm trying to achieve. And that comes from what we talked about earlier, that little bit of risk that you've got to take in order to get those rewards.
This has been so valuable, Andy, and I know how valuable your time is. You have so many ways people can get a little value from you. Would you name a few of them, from your blog to the book, and then, of course, this great recording?
You know, the number of different ways to find me. If you just remember one way, then andybeal.com, ANDYBEAL.com, has links to all of what I've got going on. Marketingpilgrim.com is my blog. I have a great group of writers. We discuss internet marketing news. We try to focus on stuff where we can try and bring a new opinion to the story or a different angle. So it's not just your boring regurgitating headlines kind of stuff. Trackur, TRACKUR.com is the reputation monitoring tool. And Radically Transparent is the book. And you can find that, if not in your local bookstore, then it's always in stock at Amazon.com. And, happy to answer any questions, that your listeners may have. I'm on Twitter. If you got a quick question, just follow me at Andy Beal on Twitter, and I'm on there incessantly, so you'll always be able to reach me there.
That's very valuable. And I want to thank Pat Howlett, because he was the one where I said, I need to learn more of this. Who's the sharpest guy on reputation management you've known? And he said, you better get this book, consume it.
Cool. Well, that's
and
good.
See if you can earn your way to some of Andy's time. So I want to really thank.
Yeah, well, it's been mutually beneficial. I enjoy when we get together, and I'll have to remember to thank Pat for that endorsement.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to Inquire Online, where unique questions inspire new answers. To learn about other shows, go to inquireonline.info.